So I want to talk about the Silicon Valley Bank's collapse, how it affected Etsy, and yeah, how it made me think so many Etsy sellers don't think of their business as a business and what they need to think about here. Um, yeah, so if you haven't heard about it, there was a whole thing last week, well, this into this week. I didn't talk about it for some very good reasons, and it was because of how people were panicking. But it really made me think about things. So I'm going to try and cover a few of the things that it made me think about. So what happened was there was a run on some banks, and some banks kind of collapsed. A run on the banks means where people lose a bit of confidence in the bank. Some people take their money out, and then more and more people take their money out, and the bank kind of collapses. Everything's sort of recovering a bit just now. It's gone less crazy, but one of those banks was a bank where Etsy keeps some of its money. And it clearly also was the bank that they were using to pay people's funds when people requested funds. So it meant that some people were unable to get their money. They were supposed to come out on Friday. I don't think they got their money till about Tuesday or Wednesday. So there was a few issues with this whole thing. Firstly, incorrectly, a lot of people did complain that Etsy weren't keeping people up to date and announced. Now, there was a thing saying your payments have been delayed when people's payments were being delayed, but the dates weren't necessarily the right thing. But there was no big announcement or nothing in the forums, which was just leaving people to speculate and panic, which I understand. I mean, the thing is, Etsy was... Look, for those that don't know, I also work for eRank, and I have a couple of times it's generally when something's fallen over with Etsy that does a cascade effect onto eRank. We wake up in the morning and suddenly find like the customer support chat has completely blown up with hundreds of people. So give a yell to the technical people, they run off and deal with stuff. We dive in and answer all people's hundreds of questions. And I can only imagine how much larger scale that is with Etsy. They'll have woken up to hundreds of thousands of questions. And I've seen a couple of times at eRank, I'm sure the guys won't mind me saying this, we are mad panic answering everything. The clever people behind the scenes are mad panicking, trying to fix everything. And then when we all come up for air, somebody goes, oh, should we have put a notice on the website to say what had happened? Or should we have made an announcement? And we're like, oh, yep, totally should have done. Probably something similar at Etsy, or I can also see they were dealing with these hundreds of questions and everything, but it could have caused more panic. Because at the end of the day, they knew how much of a big deal it was for them, which I don't think it was as big a deal as people make them think. That's another point we'll come to in a minute. I don't think it was quite such a big a deal. So if they posted something going, one of her banks has collapsed, then the people who hadn't heard about it would hear about it and would be panicking, and all bad things would happen. As it stands, Etsy said, hey, there's been an issue. Your payment's going to be delayed, mate. That's fine. But people were hearing from other sources, this Silicon Valley bank has collapsed. Etsy does some banking there. OMG, Etsy's going to collapse. Not the same thing at all. It just seemed their technical people were just trying to find a way. Obviously now it wasn't even everybody had their payments delayed, but a certain number of people would have been paid through this banking system. So they had to find another way to do it. That takes time. That's fair enough. That happens. So they probably didn't want to freak people out with something that wasn't really relevant. That was people's speculation, but people were freaking out. Now, this is another kind of thing. It had me thinking that how many Etsy sellers are not thinking of their business as a business. Let me explain. I knew that Etsy wasn't going to collapse because of this, because Etsy thinks like a business. So it's diversified itself across many places. It didn't know that the bank was going to collapse, but the one bank collapsed. It only had a portion of its banking was through that bank. It uses other banks. It also has backup money. It has money that that it can use for certain things. So, Etsy is not living hand to mouth. Unfortunately, quite a lot of sellers were saying, I need that money. Like, the 2 days delay was too much for them. They're like, I need that money to pay my mortgage, to pay my really important bills. Now, before I'm going to get so much hate for this, I know. I am not saying that I'm not understanding of people who are really living hand to mouth here. One day I will tell the story of the day my car tried to kill me. That's not even clickbait or anything like that. I understand what it is like being living hand to mouth. But we have to think like a business. So we have to diversify our selling kind of things. And that means as a business, we can't be that tight. We can't be, I need this money to come out on this day to be able to pay my bills. We need backups. We need money coming from extra places. So this is a horrible thing to say. If you're that tight, it really hurts me to think that people are in that situation, because right now, things for most shops, sales are not going to get better than they are just now. They're likely to get worse than they are just now, right through until the end of the summer. This is the slow slump. So if you're struggling just now, things aren't likely to get massively better. So you're not ready to be full-time on Etsy. So I would definitely, you really, really, really need to be looking at getting something else. Probably for many of us, that's going to mean some kind of alternative job. Keep Etsy on the side, but you might not be in a place for this to be a business for you yet. And I'm sorry to say that, but that is something that we all have to think about. The other thing is, like I said, like I will say a million times, diversify all of your money. Like, all of Etsy's money wasn't going through one bank account. All of your money shouldn't be coming from one place. Look at diversifying different things you can do to make money. I talk about this all the time. Can you be doing tutorials somewhere else? Can you be running courses? Can you be selling kits on different platforms? Can you be running live courses, taking classes, all sorts of things? Look at what else you can be doing, and certainly can you be selling in different places. Your entire business model shouldn't be Etsy, because that is not a very good business model. And Etsy is the best place for selling art online, I feel, at the minute in time, but it shouldn't be your only place. So that's one thing there. The other thing is, it's the panic and stuff that really, really annoys me whenever anything goes wrong. Now, I was seeing in forums and groups and everywhere, people were commenting and saying, look, this one person on Twitter or Tumblr or someplace has said Etsy's going to collapse because of this. And people were sharing that as if it's gospel because somebody said that. So everyone is so quick to jump on and say, oh, Etsy's going to collapse. So spreading this kind of fear. And you know what it did? Now, we spoke about the people who are hand to mouth. They needed that money to pay their bills immediately. But because everyone else was freaking out, people whose payments weren't due yet, who maybe had $20 sitting in Etsy, were like, Etsy's going to collapse. I'm going to demand, I'm going to put in a call to get my my money out right now. I'm going to try and get next day getting my money out. Deposit. There's the word. I'm going to go for next day deposit. So you had thousands and thousands of people putting more strain on the system that Etsy was trying to get up and running. But not only that, it's putting the strain on the system when there's people who really, really needed that money. So we were doing a kind of an equivalent run on the banks going, I want my $2. 10,000 people saying, I want my $2 is stopping that person getting their money to pay their mortgage. So yeah, panic and stuff doesn't help anyone. It was clear Etsy was not going to collapse. But people want to think the worst. And that is another thing. I don't know if I've said this before, but I've got to say it now. If you are so stressed and so hating on Etsy, as so many people are, thinking they're a terrible company. Again, first diversify, but leave Etsy. Don't be using a company that has you under such stress all of the time, thinking that they're such a terrible company. I hope that makes sense. Oh, anyway, yeah. A, a randomly Pam rant. I know you guys will be more coherent in the comments. I know I'm probably going to get hate for this one. I don't mean hate. I just mean, look, the reason I couldn't talk about this when it was happening, because people were just panicking when there wasn't place to be panicking. Yeah. Okay, I hope that'll make sense.